Oh, jam, jam, Teddy jam for me, yeah. Teddy jam for me, yeah. Dum, 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 dum. Teddy jam for me, yeah. Dum, 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 dum. Dum, 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 dum. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Teddy jam for me, yeah. Dum, dum, diddy. Dum, dum, diddy. Oh. Jam for me, jam for me, jam, jam, jam for me. Where the place get funky, get funky for me. Teddy jam for me. Oh, jam, jam, Teddy jam for me. Jam, jam. Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is Freedom and Fun Friday on this 22nd day of the month of March, and it's 4 minutes. 4 minutes past the hour. Ferguson Megatroy, we in the building. It's about to get set off on this Freedom and Fun Friday. Yours truly, Joe Dupree from 100 BLK, the Black Station. I'm hanging with my girl Jax. All I gotta do is go exit stage right. She's right there, life strategist, art therapist. You know, she does speeches and she talks to a lot of celebrities, along with my brother Fatim from 100 BLK, and he also hangs out in New York City at a place called 1075 WBLS. Good morning. Hey,
Great day.
what's happening? What's happening? Good morning, Jax. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing wonderful. It's Friday, another beautiful day. The Most High got us through another week, so we should shout and hip hip hooray.
I was wondering if we were. I was wondering if we were going to turn animated and exit stage left or exit stage right.
Brother Fatim representing a very controversial team this morning.
Yeah,
a very controversial team.
Yeah, that's why I put it back on there in the news there, brother. So, and it's a deep investigation. I thought it was something simple, but it seems like the big star Ohtani over there, seemed like his interpreter had siphoned or stolen money from him for a gambling habit, and the Dodgers discovered it. And Ohtani's interpreter has been fired, let go, but they're still investigating this, and they saying it's rocking baseball, so they are doing more investigations on this, because you got to realize Ohtani is one of the biggest stars in Major League Baseball in the world. And you know, anything associated with gambling, you know, Willie Mays, after retiring from Major League Baseball, worked for like a casino. They wanted to not bar him, but kind of distance themselves from him. And then, of course, Pete Rose was caught gambling as a manager for this, I believe it was the Cincinnati Reds at the particular time.
True.
And he is still barred from baseball. And that's another conversation. I still think that man has paid his dues. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame now.
That's what I'm talking about. But the Four Horsemen would not be the Four Horsemen without, last but not least, the conduit herself. She just walked into the room. You know how she do. It's none other than Shauna Sayers. Give it up.
Good morning.
Good morning. I love that shirt. I love that shirt. I
put it on today because you know it's the primaries this weekend. You know, 23rd we have an election, so I need all my local folks to go out to the polls like y'all did for the clubs and you know the parties and the giveaways and whatever y'all be lining up for.
Jordan. All kind of stuff they line up for. Hey,
you know, we preach that. You know, we preach that, but a lot of times we preach into the choir. And I'm not saying that we don't change people, but you need a mass movement. When we say these things, I mean, they say one person, if you could change one person's heart to go out there and do that, you were successful. But if we want to be a movement, we got to continue to hit the pavement, because you know, there's still a lot of people that just don't feel like their vote count, or don't feel like they have to exercise their vote, or don't know that maybe I'm working or I'm handicapped or whatever. You can mail in your vote. So people don't have this information. So we got to continue that campaign of educating people's rights to vote.
I would have freed a lot of slaves in my day. I freed a lot of slaves in my day. I would have freed a lot more had they known they were slaves. I'm so sick and tired of marching and sitting and protesting, and you know, because it's things that we could fix ourselves. If we still gotta protest and do a mass movement to make people understand the importance of voting, baby, I don't.
And it's interesting, Shauna. I had that frustration, and I had the frustration of when we need something, or fighting for something, or fighting for injustice or whatever. I used to get frustrated because I felt that we still should implement more tactics to marching. But it's so ironic that one day I heard Reverend Sharpton say, it's amazing that I hear our people say we're so frustrated of marching and protesting, but it's amazing that other cultures use our tactics when they want something. You hear them say, no justice, no peace. That comes from us.
That's right.
From us. But you see, when the mass movement, when you saw the women's march across the globe, when you saw the youth march across the globe for against gun violence, they march, they protest. So even though we're frustrated because it seems like sometimes we're walking down a dead end alley, we cannot continue to let our voices be heard, come out in masses, but we have to implement more tactics. But I'm not going to throw that one away because it's amazing. Other people use those tactics and are successful, and we have been successful as well.
And I do want to add, that I can vent to y'all, because you understand the plight.
Yes.
Right. I don't want anybody to ever think that Shauna Sides, the conduit, is gonna stop doing anything. I just changed the approach. You know what I'm saying? I called Joe yesterday and told him, since the strokes, it's like I can't handle too much. It becomes a clutter, right? Or it becomes, it's like a balloon with air in it. It's hard to explain. So I've learned to pick my battles and pick how to fight, right? I cannot get out on the front and throw them hands and walk that walk no more. I'm not physically fit for that. So I fight the battles in the capacity that I now can. I'll slap them heels on and I'll go to the meetings where they making them decisions at. And they not going to just go around making decisions without at least my comeback or input, and that is also important. We have school board changes coming up. We have a bullying problem that is out of control, yet there is still nothing implemented into the day-to-day or even the afternoon of the kids, right? So instead of me battling adults, I don't do that. I go talk to people about how to get that in.
Hey, Shauna, the other day you wasn't part of the show. Excuse me, Jackson Joe, for a minute, because I mentioned something because I brought up your name and you wasn't here, and I didn't think that was fair because I said I understand Shauna, and you all hear me support Sister Shauna on this. But the other day we were talking about some folks. Brother Timothy called in, and I talked about Malcolm X, and I talked about that what Shauna has done is she's found her lane, and I explained that. It's hard. It's like doing double work when you have to deal with adults who've already built up some bad habits. You got to break those bad habits to now implement good habits. So you got to do twice the work, where with children, you can implement, they're not built up with so many bad habits because of their experience on earth and the time. So, but I did say that those folks that do walk in that lane, we do have to try to bend grown trees, because Timothy, who said he did some time and came out and doing good work in the community, and I use Malcolm X as one who was a grown tree that was bent when he went to prison, and he was changed, and he changed masses of people. So I'm not contradicting what Sister Shauna is saying. I'm saying that she has her lane. I understand that lane, and my approach is different. But I'm also saying we also put emphasis on the adults that we can reach, because a lot of those adults can reach other adults and also other children.
100%. You mentioned implementing habits. Just yesterday, we do every Tuesday and Thursday, we do the CEASE curriculum at Thrive Academy, right? So yesterday, we are on module 4, which is responding to bullying. Module 3 is understanding bullying and all the parts and players, right? So module 4, we came up with an acronym. Like, you got DARE to keep kids off drugs, right? We got DARES to play on my top, right? So the D is for de-escalation. A is for assertive communication. R is for reevaluate, rescue. E is for escape. And then S is for support. So as I was telling the children, giving them examples, A dude told me, he was like, man, Miss Shauna, with all due respect, that ain't about to happen these days. I said, I'm glad you said that because you're 100% correct. I said, but the only reason why it's not happening is because you never tried any one of them 4 steps. I said, how many times have you tried to de-escalate in the examples that I gave you? He said, never. I said, how many times did you run away or did you stay because they thought it was going to make you look like a punk? He was like, never. I said, so if you have successfully practiced messing up, doing it your way, why don't you just give this way a little chance and see what happens? And he was like, I ain't never thought about that like that.
Hey, Jackson
but
Joe.
I keep saying it over and over again. People do, even grown people and children do what they know how to do.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
That reminds me of I see a correlation with what you're just saying and what Brother Fatim was saying in terms of marching. So we have the knowledge, we can gain the knowledge and the information, but without application, the knowledge means nothing. So we have to apply that knowledge. And when we apply that knowledge, that's how we get wisdom and show wisdom. So as a people, we have to have a strong desire to seek wisdom and obtain wisdom and utilize wisdom within our homes and within our community. So with those students, if they start to really say, okay, Miss Shauna is giving us knowledge, here's the information that we need, now they have to practice applying it. But what happens many times with the application part, it takes discipline. And as a people, we are not very disciplined in so many ways. Therefore, we always fall short. So we can march all we want, but if we don't actually apply it, it's good for the day. And it makes you feel good in that moment. But now let's go home and apply it to our families. Go home and apply it to our neighbors.
And that's what I have to throw with the application. With children, you have to have consistency. So you cannot have me or someone like me show them once a week for 1 hour and expect a change to happen. We need people like a bullying prevention interventionist on campus. You need somebody for that.
I have a quick question to
everything else for that.
I have a quick question to all of y'all. And this is a quick rapid fire. Since you are the discipline, is a parent disciplining their child from a punishment to a spanking, bullying? Because you got in some states and parishes, they have laws about corporate punishment, quote unquote. And there is a difference between, I feel there's a difference between when you discipline your child and abuse your child. But now states and governments have implemented or put their nose in your business. And if your child goes to school and say that I got a spanking, you can be removed from the house and put it in an investigation. And I have a problem with that. I don't have a problem when there is abuse, but I can't I'm not going to let some government tell me how I have to raise my child. So I want to throw that out there.
I got an answer, and I'm sorry to jump in, but y'all know I'll lose my thought in a minute, right? So this is so funny because I was a corporal punishment parent for 2 of my kids. Well, tried. One definitely, my son. Nina, my best friend, totally against it. She never had to lay a hand on any of her kids, right? So because the laws have now changed and they done put their nose in your business, what you gonna do? Are you gonna continue to do it that way and continue to get the results? Or are you gonna find another approach in dealing with the parenting of your child? Yes, I believe that corporal punishment is sometimes necessary if it's done in a loving fashion, if it's not overboard, because that's where the line is drawn. I got my butt whipped. If anything that my mom and daddy did to me would have happened today, they both would have been under the jail. I promise you 100%. However, I knew that they were doing it out of love. Did I ever go tell somebody, an adult, that my parents beat me? I ain't gonna lie. I sure did. Man, I wanted to get out. I thought I had the worst house in the world. But then the person I told it to knew my mama, and they knew my daddy, and they knew that their intent and heart was good. And they also knew that I wasn't the best of child, but then now you get the village. So because the laws have changed, and because the children are responding differently, and because the school system is messed up, and because the jail system is fit to arrest them, you have to accommodate to fit the environment. Baby, that's in the science book.
That's right. And you know what? My mom, I know she's tuning in now. Look, I'm gonna do like Joe. I know she's tuning in now.
What's up, Mom?
My mama should just be getting up for parole because I stayed getting beaten when I was little, and I felt she went overboard, but she felt she was doing the right thing. So now in the state of New Jersey, corporal punishment, you can't have your kids kneeling on rice and all this other crazy corporal punishment stuff. You can't do that in the state of New Jersey, but you can spank your child. But you have to spank them according to the laws. You could spank them on the meaty part of their body, so like their buttocks or maybe their thighs. But you shouldn't be beating your child anyway when you're all angry and crazy. You can't let your personal situations, and dealing with anger. I was teaching a class on anger yesterday. You have dumping or displacement. You have aggression and acting out. And then you have burying. Those are like 3 of the anger styles. So you can't be mad at something that pissed you off at your job. Now your kid comes home and maybe knocks over a cup of water, and now you just black out and beat the hell out of your child. That is not appropriate at all. But you can tap them up on the meaty part of their butts. But I definitely agree with you, Brother Fatin. Like, we need to be able to discipline our children without the law getting involved. Unfortunately, some parents go overboard because they have anger issues, aggression issues, and are just simply out of control. But yeah, we're supposed to discipline our child. The book says, spare the rod, spoil the child. And if we spare the rod and don't discipline our children today, tomorrow somebody else is going to have to discipline them, and it's going to cost us a lot of money in some ways.
That's Jax, where I was exactly about to go. Listen, family, I look at it like this, and we're looking at 20 minutes past the hour. On this subject, I'm simply at this place. If you spare the rod and you spoil the child, somebody out there has a rod for them. That rod might take them to the graveyard. So many a times us not doing it the way it used to be done, some things from the past needs to stay around because they work, period. And I think too many times we try to talk about the old way of how things used to happen or what things used to do and all that stuff. No. Sometimes you got to look at what worked in the past, because if you don't discipline your child, chances are better than good they're going to wind up in the prison or in the graveyard because of your letting the child raise the house instead of you raising. Your job is to raise the child. Your job is to raise the child, not to let the child do what the child wants to do. Now, it is 22 minutes past the hour, and I want to continue this subject, but I want to ring the bell. I want to ring the bell for anybody today that is celebrating a birthday. Anniversary of today is your special day on this 22nd day of March. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, happy special day to you. Now, I also want to do one other thing. I want to do one other thing before we continue into this conversation. But you know what? I'm going to do another 15. I'm not. I just feel like you should raise your child. If child abuse, by what it is said to be today, would have been happening back when Earlene and Lois Anderson was handling me, and I was a bad child. I was very nerdy, but I was a very cunning and bad child. The truth of the matter would be that would have been abuse. But I will say this: there's not a whooping, there's not a time. Mr. Lois and Miss Earlene, my mom and dad, there was times when I tried to be Billy Badass and come home at 3 a.m. There was a blanket waiting for me on the porch. And my dad was like, "No, you ain't coming. Your mama told you what time to be home. You lucky I ain't out there whooping your ass. Sleep your ass on the porch."
Let me ask you
what
something.
they did. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I get a couple comments in real quick?
Yeah,
Pat Gabriel says they do that so that kids won't respect rules, and that's a recipe for a pipeline to prison. Timothy responds, says, "Facts, bro. If we can't whip them as a parent, whip them and a parent them, then prison make money, or the funeral homes or the doctors sell their organs. Last is a whole other story. We ain't ready for that truth."
I see my best friend is watching. I wish she could call in. They ain't got to see your beautiful face, but I want you to call in. But I have a question because I learned this from Shanitria. Okay, Joe, do you know that I love you?
I know what okay. I believe that. Yes, I believe you love me. I believe you do. I know what you say, and I believe it. Yeah.
Okay, so you feel that, Brother Fatim, even though you have not met me, do you know that I care about you and I really
Yes.
respect you? Okay, Sister James, do you feel the same way?
Absolutely.
Okay, how many times have I beat any one of you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Can I get the let me get the cricket button.
But
Let me
but
get the
we
cricket button.
friends.
Nope.
We friends. We not okay. I'm gonna hit the cricket button. I'm gonna hit the
Uh-huh.
cricket button.
Mhm.
I'm gonna
All
hit the
right.
cricket button. But you're
Nope.
not my child.
Does not matter. No. When it comes in that lane, and this is just my opinion, okay? If the person you're trying to discipline knows and feels and understands to their core that you really give a damn, you not gonna have to beat them.
Oh, that's
I see
outrage.
children every Tuesday and Thursday.
Nope.
Now don't get me wrong. Do I
Nope.
believe in chastising? Yes, there's other forms of discipline besides resorting to whipping as the first resort. If you gotta beat your kid as a first resort,
No, I'm not saying
doing
as
your
a
job
first
for a
result.
long
I agree. As a first result,
Yeah.
I agree. Now, hold on. Let me say this.
And if you use
China,
it as a
China.
first resort, you need some parental counseling.
I agree. As a first resort should never be to put your hands on anybody. Putting your hands on anybody as the first result
Yes.
should never be. But I thoroughly believe that if I have talked to you, if I have tried to reason with you, if I have parented you, if I am your parent, and you are multiply making the same offense over and over again, there comes a point that eventually my conversation, and then I'm going to, I hate to say it, I'm going to put hands on you.
Now,
all my children. Hold it.
I agree.
Yeah, well, let me jump in here. Let me jump in here because y'all saw me shaking my head, and I know we got.
Hold on, I'm gonna let you get in. Hold it.
I mean, we got a guest in about 2 minutes, so I just want to try to get.
Okay, great. For my 37-year-old to my 15-year-old, I have I have 2 young women and I have 3 young men. They have all caught the belt of these hands in some shape, form, or fashion, because there comes a point where you say, man, I've done everything reasonable to try to make you understand where I'm standing. Once again, I'll say it to the high heavens. You and Miss Sinitria may completely disagree. I'm your parent. I happen to like you and I am your friend, but my first pole position, the first position I'm in, I am your damn parent, and I will parent you, Brother Fatim.
Yeah, so let me just say this. So when Shauna said, and I understand what Sister Shauna is saying, trust me, I do. So, but I'm just telling you, I knew my mother loved me. I'm not saying it from an adult perspective. I knew my mother loved me when she was whipping my ass. My mother abused me. That was abuse. Whipping me with an extension cord. I ran in the hallway, thought I saw water. She joked about that. Boy, I whipped that boy's ass till he thought he saw a pool of water in the hallway. I had webs all over my body. That's abuse. I still knew my mother loved me. I still would never gotten up after that beating. And somebody said, your mother loved me? My mother loved me. But she told me 3 times, don't touch that. She ain't gonna have to say, don't touch that. That's gonna burn you. And you keep doing that. My mother put her hands on me. She ain't sitting there waiting weeks and weeks and talking to me. She whipped my ass. And was it abuse? I can call it what it was. Some of it was abuse. But I hate to use the word, did I deserve it? I got to be very careful because there's a mindset. But I was a badass. And I'm going to tell you, those whipping as I got older, my father talked to me more because I didn't want my father to put my hands on me, because he said, if I have to put hands on you, boy, it's not going to be good. And just hearing the story that my grandfather knocked his 21-year-old son, my uncle, clean out because he thought he was a man. He knocked his ass out. I didn't want to put my father in that position. I didn't want to put myself in a confrontation with my father. My mother, as I got older, tried to beat me, and I'll grab the belt or I would run or whatever. But my mother beat me with anything that she could put her hand on. I hated the belt. She thought she was slick. She'd get this extension cord. She would beat me with the extension cord or the belt, on the plug on the iron. That's abuse, y'all. When I got webs all over my body.
Mhm.
But I still would say my mother loved me. So the point that you made, Shauna, to say that you don't have to wear, I knew my parents loved me. I knew my mother, because my mother did the most of the beating. When I got older, I realized punishments hurt me worse than a beating. All my friends said, we'd rather get a beat and go back outside and play.
That's
I
right.
didn't know
But
my mama
punishment
loved me
really
until I
started
was
to take
clean in
effect.
my 30s. I didn't know she loved me until I was clean in my 30s.
Mm.
You're on mute,
Wow.
Joe. Joe, unmute your mic.
That's what
We
he
have a
get. He
caller on
always
the line.
beating everybody else.
Okay.
Right. We have a caller on the line. So caller, say your name, where you calling from. I know you want to get engaged in this conversation. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, well, I'm Timothy Malone, so man. You know,
All right, Tim, go ahead.
I want to get into the conversation about. All right, just notice, bro. When they took whipping out of school, they took parenting away from parents. You know that's when all the killing started. But we can't look if we can't raise our kids, the penitentiary will raise our kids. That's a fact. Penitentiary. I mean, but it's designed. It was, you know, they sat down to the table, but we got to understand that the system sat down to the table. If parents can't whip these children, all the people who invested in these prisons is gonna make money, bro. You know, they took praying out of school. They took whipping out of school. If we can't parent out, you know, and like a lot of parents nowadays, but like when the young kids, are sad to see that they die. They go to the funeral home. They don't have no organs, bro. We don't want to. We're not gonna sit and talk about that. The parents trying to figure out how they gonna bury their child.
Well, Brother
The doctors
Timothy,
made all the money off the young organs.
Brother Timothy, I got a problem with schools whipping your children. I ain't with that. I'm gonna tell you straight up. I ain't with that because I don't know if a teacher loves me. I'm not with that. I don't have a problem with punishing. I don't have a problem passing it on to a parent. I don't even have a problem if a parent within a community giving permission for other parents that they know and trust and love their kids and love my kid to discipline. But I am not going to overstretch where to give power to teachers and educational professionals putting their hands on children that they just learning possibly for a grade or a semester. Unfortunately, I'm against that totally.
So let me say this. Hold on, Tim.
I agree with that.
Tim,
Okay.
hold on for a second. But here's the thing, and I want you to stay on for a minute, Tim, because we're getting ready to bring on a special guest. And after I say this, I'm gonna let Brother Fatim introduce the guest, and I'm gonna mute you for just a minute, Tim. Just a minute. You're still on the phone. Don't go nowhere. But let's be truthful. Back in the day, Brother Fatim, when you and I were in school, elementary, junior high, and high school, let's be for real. And probably anybody in here who was in junior high, elementary, or high school in the 70s or the 80s, your teachers had permission to paddle you. To be exact, your in the state of Tennessee, I know in the state of Louisiana, back in the 70s and the 80s, your teachers and the principal had permission to paddle you.
And
there are
sometimes
pictures
when
that
they
I
paddle
have.
you, they play with you too.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah,
I'm
we
just
had
saying, wait a minute, wait a minute. So with that being said, let's do this. We have a great guest, which all this trickles into the conversation of policing, what goes on with police. Brother Fatim, I'm gonna let you have the floor and introduce your guest. The floor is yours, my brother.
All right, so this brother here I've known for quite a while. He's a great brother that we're bringing on, and I'm bringing him on to talk about the new gun laws that have been implemented in South Carolina. But before we get into that topic, I want to bring him into this conversation. Me and him have never ever had this conversation, but I believe he can converse about a lot of things. And this is my good brother, Mark Claxton. He is the director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance. He is a retired NYPD detective, New York Police Department detective. Mark stood up against NYPD bias or police brutality as a member of the NYPD. He's a co-founder of the Black fraternal organization, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, which is a New York City based advocacy group which focuses on fighting injustices between the African American community and their interactions with the New York City Police Department. My brother, good morning, Brother Mark. How you doing, my brother?
Good, brother. Doing well, man. Thank you for the invitation to come on and engage in some discussion here.
There you go. So, Mark, I mean, I don't know if you heard some of the comments that we were making about corporate punishment in the sense of discipline, not punishment, corporal discipline from a parent in the sense of whipping your kid. And law's different. They're different in New York, different. They just different state to state. As our host Joe was saying, that some schools during the 70s and 60s, 70s, and 80s had permission to paddle your child. In junior high school, there was only one guidance counselor that did that, and parents came up there furious because what Sister Shauna said, it was out there that this man, come to find out, he was abusing boys. So that's why we stayed away from that. But Mark, before we get into the gun law situation here, let's talk a little bit about this discipline, because I see in South Carolina, in other states, if a child is disciplined by their parent and they go to school and report that to the teacher that my parents, my mommy, my daddy, or guardian is with me, that professional has to report that. And then they have to do an investigation. They'll pull the children out of the house. They'll do an investigation. But the bottom line is that too far? And some kids now knowing that use that against their parents. You put your hand on me if you want me, I'm going to report you. So how do you look at that as being a former police officer, but still being in law enforcement?
Well, my view, and this is based on my practical experience, in the police department, my last few years in the NYPD, I served as the domestic violence and child abuse investigator and coordinator. And a large part of that was handling those reports that came in from mandatory reporters, such as school teachers or administrators, regarding possible abuse situations of the children. And I saw, oftentimes what I saw was an overreaction by those agencies that are supposed to be protecting the children and offering the services to the families, an overreaction when it pertained to Black and Latino families and brown families, as opposed to their reaction to white families. All too often, what occurred was that the agency came in and removed the children from their immediate family and had them placed either with the alternative family, secondary stream family, or in worst case scenario, other social service agencies. They did that dramatically more often with the families of color. So that was an additional concern. I do believe, I'm like you, Fatin. I don't want nobody putting their hands on my child. I'm one of those type of parents because I don't trust their motivations and I don't trust what could be their biases and how they applied and the possibility of abusing my child. So I think that's a major concern. I do support mandatory reporters making those notifications to the agencies that are charged with that. I just wish that the arm of law in this case, like in so many other cases, was applied more judiciously and more objectively, and without the bias that is kind of baked into the system of criminal justice, period.
Sounds good. I want to get my other team folks in there, Shauna and Jax.
Yes, great day, my brother Mark. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Question for you. So I know you worked in DV and child abuse, but I also know that you work within the narcotics division.
Yes.
So in doing that work, what do you see the correlation between the three of them as it relates to raising children?
That's such a great question. I think a lot of times people don't see the connective tissue between criminal activity and engagement and perhaps past trauma from childhood or experience or socialization as a child. I mean, the further you get away from a centralized kind of family structure, and you don't need the parents necessarily in the home together, but the further you get away from the structure, the more prone individuals, children are to engage in behavior that is criminal, that is outside of social norms. And there's a lot of research, for example, and in New York particular, I know this has come up over the past few years with the new administration, the connection between learning disabilities, dyslexia specifically, and the rates of incarceration. So just like there is a connection between those learning disabilities, there is definitely a connection with the social structure, family structure, and family culture as it relates to crime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Shauna?
Good morning. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your service as well. I have a nonprofit called Bully Box where we focus on bullying and suicide prevention in adolescents. My question for you is, in your years of service, what is the percentage of violent crimes, especially, but any crimes really, done by minors or adolescents that have been deemed through investigation the root cause of bullying?
Ooh, that's a hard one because I don't have any specific data on that, and especially off the top of my head. But I will tell you that, just as the case that there are contributing factors to criminal behavior oftentimes, there are social factors, there are economic factors. Without a doubt, bullying and that kind of social intimidation can lead to a more aggressive or a reactive kind of behavior that too often results in criminal conduct. So all of these things feed into the larger issue of crime and those people who commit the crimes. But I'll also add this little twist to it, as I have to do with like everything criminal justice. I always say you only find crime where you look for it. So if you target your data in particular communities, you can give a false impression that those particular communities engage in crime more often. And why? Because you have ignored the other communities and the frequency of crime that occurs in those communities, and the same socioeconomic factors that contribute to crime. So I think we have to be careful, and I'm sure we're all mindful of it, but we have to be careful, and I have the opportunity to discuss these issues a lot of times. Got to be careful to make sure that I shift that focus into, really scrutinizing where data comes from, how data was collected, whether it's objective and fair or whether it's very subjective. And unfortunately, Sister Shauna, data collection is a very, very subjective thing when it comes to criminal justice system. So, like I say, what's that thing about statistics? There's statistics, damn statistics, and lies. So we just have to be mindful about that.
I do kind of, I'm not certain of geographic areas. I've had a few strokes in life, but I do know that bullying comes up for certain persuasions when it's in relation to like mass shootings, right? But if it's a situation of another persuasion that results in fatalities or something like that, that the bullying word is not brought up at all.
Right.
At all.
Yeah, that happens. There it is. There's that like subjective kind of application of titles and tags that we place on people, on our children primarily. And it's all dependent upon the race of the quote unquote offender, because if it's a black child, they're more likely to be termed an offender,
Correct.
A criminal, that kind of thing.
Not a victim.
Right, not a victim, and not just some poor, confused, possibly abused, angry, reactive type of tag that they place on white assailants, so to speak.
Right.
Well, Brother Mark,
Joe in. Okay,
Brother
Joe in
Mark,
before we move on to that other topic I brought you on, Joe.
So, Brother Mark, I really appreciate you coming on. I am also one of your brothers in blue down here, down south. And even though I know you were up in New York City, and once again, I commend you for your service and all that you've done and all that you continue to do. you know, it's like you said, the skewing, we call it the skewing of the numbers. You know, folks can make numbers look the way they want it to look because they'll take certain factors out and won't tell you, well, when I gave you these numbers, you know, I took all the women out this, or I took all the white Caucasian women, or I took all the white folks out, or I took all the black folks out. So when they tell you numbers, and then they'll have a little thing in the bottom in little small print, because it's legal for them to do that, saying these are the numbers I took out. Well, you're only hearing what they say. You don't see the little small print in the corner. You know, the craziest thing when I listen to all this is Mark, Jax, Fatim, Shauna, myself. I'm pretty sure all of us are over the age of 40. And, you know, I can honestly say that both my parents in some shape, form, or fashion disciplined me in a manner that if they had disciplined me that way today, folks would have said, you abused that child. And last time I checked, I got 4 degrees hanging on the wall. Last time I checked, I served 28 years in the military honorably. Last time I checked, I speak 4 different languages. And mind you, my dad was a sharecropper and my mama cleaned people's houses. And the reason sometimes they would whoop and discipline me is they said, we do not want you to be where we're at. And if we have to get your tail in order and get you straight, that you never get abused by these folks like we gotta, they abused me because they knew how real abuse felt. They knew how it felt when, quote unquote, Mr. Charlie said, don't walk on my side of the street. Get on the other side. They knew how it felt when the threat of a hanging, a lynching, or somebody causing major bodily harm to you just because you didn't say yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, because of your complexion of your skin and their complexion of their skin. And we want to sit here and talk about abuse, and we want to talk about, oh, do as I say, but don't do as I do. Baby, please, let me tell you something. We got bigger fish to fry than this, in my humble opinion. Because I see how I came out. And I know this, had my parents not disciplined me the way they disciplined me, I probably would have been in somebody's prison. As intelligent as I was, because when you let children raise themselves, children do what children do. I still don't think we have a children problem. I think we have a major parenting problem, Brother Mark.
Yeah, I think we do have a major parenting problem. I think children are children, and we were all exposed to many of the same things that these children are exposed to. I think perhaps our support structures were different. I think the manner in which parents felt comfortable in raising a child, the urgency of having structure in that family structure, because, like you said, Joe, it really was a matter of survival for many of our parents. They did that. They whipped you so the next person wouldn't have to whip you, or you put yourself in a position to get whipped, that kind of thing. So I think there's a different dynamic at play right now in the current generation. And I hate to say that because I am old, but I always sound real old when I say these young kids, these young boys, that kind of thing. But so I try to resist that at every corner. But I do recognize that there are some major differences. And I think the times that we are living in have caused us to kind of shift away from what raised us and what was familiar with us and what was instructed and poured into us. For many of the parents, there are still some parents here, and the parents are also dealing with some additional challenges now as well, and we have to recognize that.
Amen.
But I think it's important for us to identify that there are correctable issues that place us in harm's way, and we have to kind of teach one another. And I'm talking about families teaching the children and vice versa, teach one another how to avoid the pitfalls and traps that are set out there. And many of them are old time traps. They've been around for a long time.
Amen.
So we just have to continue to be vigilant about trying to address those issues. And I'll give my last statistics quote, because I love this one. This is really what it is. And I won't attribute it to anybody because they say 4 or 5 different people said it, but they said we should use statistics as the drunk uses a lamppost for support, but not illumination. So you don't gather anything from statistics, but you can support your theories using them. And that's a wise way to proceed.
Brother Fatim.
Yeah, I think this is a great springboard into the conversation, because you talk about discipline, you talk about instruction, you talk about structure, and and especially we're talking about children, and some adults are still childlike in a mentality because they are a certain age that is considered an adult, don't mean that they think and behave like an adult. And that's one of the reasons why I invited Mark onto the broadcast to talk about the new gun law that was implemented in South Carolina. The governor of South Carolina signed a bill on March 7th, or signed into law on March 7th of this year, authorizing individuals who are not otherwise prohibited from possessing a firearm to legally possess a firearm openly or concealed without training and without concealed weapons permit issued by SLED. SLED stands for South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. And I think this ties in. Now, South Carolina is not the only state. It's about 28 other states that have these quote unquote relaxed gun laws. Now, each state, even though that out of these 28 states have relaxed gun laws, they still have their own protocols and bylaws that affect that. And I mentioned South Carolina, but Louisiana, where Joe and Sister Shauna are sitting at, have those lax gun laws. Where Jackson's sitting in New Jersey, and then when I'm, in New York, they don't have that, but it's headed in a different way. They're fighting this because of the Supreme Court. Brother Mark, can you go into, and the reason why I consulted Brother Mark, because when I came down to South Carolina, I wanted to, apply for my concealed weapons permit. And I went to Mark and asked certain things, and then also the mindset, the mentality. You understand? I was talking to somebody about bullets, what difference between the hollow point bullets, even though I knew, but now being a gun owner, being a licensed gun owner, I knew the difference. But I also say on this program, I'm older now. I don't look at it, I'm a big badass walking the street with a weapon. I feel every time I walk out the house, I have more responsibility with that weapon on me than when I don't have that weapon on me. So Mark, I'll turn it over to you, and then we get our team in to talk about this, because I know that you run an organization down in you're in the Carolinas as well, and you run an organization down here, and you had to be briefed and brief your people on these new gun laws and how, if you see a gun as a law officer, and if there's probable cause, you can't approach that person because you see their gun. So I'll turn it over to you and let you explain more of this.
Yeah, brother, this really is occurring, like you indicated, and they call it, it's an orchestrated movement around the country because it's called the same thing in many different states, and that is this constitutional carry law. They made it sound, just so, streamlined and legal and attractive. It's called constitutional carry, and basically what it does is eliminate the need to even get a permit to carry if you're over 18 to even carry a firearm open. We had the open carry enacted in South Carolina a few years ago, and as an addition to that, here comes constitutional carry. So not only can you carry open, anybody can carry over 18. You can carry with very few restrictions, and that's criminal convictions and such. But it is a nationwide movement. The movement continues. It's like Louisiana. I believe they call it constitutional carry in Louisiana as well.
Correct.
So it is a nationwide movement. They're going state to state to state to prop up this idea that it somehow adheres to the Constitution if we let as many people carry as humanly possible. And the complications that we run into, for example, here in South Carolina, I'm a director of safety and emergency services for one of the largest school districts in South Carolina. And, there's always been prohibitions about carrying weapons and carrying firearms onto school campuses. But there was a slight modification in this constitutional carry law, whereas before you used to have it in a locked glove compartment or locked trunk that type of thing. The language of this law basically does not require you to have it in a locked, secured, necessary area. They say a lockable container, but even that is kind of questionable. And I say all that to say that it's placing us in our communities in enhanced danger, because we know, quite frankly, that I don't care what you call it, when Black people start to use it, there are going to be issues and problems. The response, we know the response by law enforcement when interacting with people of color is vastly different than when they're handling with white people. That's just, we've been addressing and dealing with this forever. So what do you think will be the reaction if, for example, many Blacks decide to legally, abide by this constitutional carry law, and you'll see increased Black folk open carrying all throughout the streets, etc. You're going to have incidents, and not incidents because that the people will be engaging in some kind of criminal conduct, but you'll have increased incidents because it is part of police culture to be more suspicious of that Black or brown face. And that's going to lead to additional contacts that are totally avoidable, that can unfortunately end up in loss of life. But this constitutional carry and the other provisions that are being shopped around state to state to state by, let's be clear, by the most right-wing radical Republicans, these MAGA nuts, as I call them, is really creating an environment that'll be unsustainable and unsafe, and unfortunately will lead to fatalities. And I'm sure, if they get the cold, we get pneumonia. That's how it goes.
What's that title you said? MAGA what?
MAGA nuts.
Okay, that's it. Let's get the rest of the team on in.
I'm gonna trademark that. Hold on, I'm gonna trademark that now.
You better hurry up, brother. You better hurry up. Let's get Jackson. Let's get Jack, Shauna, and definitely Joe in this, because Joe, you mentioned what there's a alliance between you and Brother Mark in that blue category, and I definitely want to hear from you. So let's get the whole team in. Jack, Shauna, and then Joe.
Yes, you are absolutely right, Brother Mark. A question for you. So I know that you focused on, gangs previously as well, right? So I know you mentioned also that gangs are simply domestic terrorists. Mm-hmm. We know that the gangs are carrying all these guns. So for our viewers who don't really understand exactly how gangs are getting these illegal guns, can you just share? Because some of our viewers may have children who are in gangs that carry those guns, and they don't really understand the inner workings of how the whole system works itself. So if you could just please share with our viewers.
Yeah, I tell you, state by state, the ability to obtain a firearm, it varies, but you'll find that in the southern states, it's much easier to, quote unquote, legally obtain firearms and obtain multiple firearms. It used to be that people would get a federal firearms dealer license and make large purchases and somehow transfer those weapons to other individuals who would take them usually up that corridor, that I-95 corridor up north, period. But now, and especially with this constitutional carry nonsense, the availability of firearms is even easier. So you'll see more people just heading over to the gun shows. They just had they always, every weekend they have a big gun show in South Carolina, but they just had a huge gun show after the announcement of this constitutional carry. So I can only imagine how sales dramatically increased, which, when you think about it, that may be the objective of this constitutional carry, to line the pockets of those people who manufacture these guns and benefit from the carnage that results. But there is a direct correlation between an increase in the availability of firearms and the amount of violence that occurs in our cities. And in large part, that violence occurs, there's a small group of people who engage in a large amount of criminal activity, a large amount of violence. And oftentimes in communities, especially in communities of color, we refer to them as gangs. And so we can really fully expect that, not every member of a quote unquote gang has a criminal record that would preclude them from being able to open carry. So just keep in mind that it's a huge possibility it will happen. You'll have even quote unquote gang members open carry and enacting violence out on our streets.
Donna?
Thank you.
Ooh, child. I almost refrained, or abstained rather, from making this comment, because I've been having this conversation with my best friend all week, and I wanted to be clear that as a whole, at speaking as an activist, speaking as a child advocate, I don't agree with the law. I don't. Okay. However, as a person, myself, okay, a parent, myself, I do note that in my small community, okay, the gun violence is not being committed by people that legally own guns. Not one of those persons have gone and gotten a gun legally at all. Okay. What the law does for me, that gives me, I'm not going to say comfort, because guns and comfort should not go together. Okay. But keep in mind, I've had 3 strokes. So if y'all know the word I'm looking for, interjected. But if my daughter, who just turned 18, or my other daughter, who is now 19, come to me and say, hey, Ma, I'm about to go give me a gun. As a parent, I'm going to take my child to a gun safety class. I'm going to take my child to a gun range. I'm going to teach them all the ins and outs. Well, someone else is going to teach them. A trained person is going to teach them. And then I'm going to teach them all of the other side of how you are not the same as your white counterparts handling or having that gun. What to do if you get stopped. But I want to be clear. Overall, I don't agree. I don't agree with it. But I think that it's going to have to fall on the parents, because I still can't understand. Yeah. I still can't understand how kids can be in the house with their parents and have assault rifles and machine guns and all of these other things, and you just not have no clue. Mm-hmm. I don't understand that. But I've reacted to that kind of circumstance, to a shooting here in my town. And Lord have mercy, sir. I was made aware that some parents are absolutely okay with their child behavior. And I had 3 strokes. Mm-hmm. So I'm not gonna say I abstain, but I just can't.
Yeah. Well, I think that you're in line with the majority of people, and especially when you talked about, because immediately you recognize that if your children want to have this firearm, one is you made a correct assumption and an appropriate assumption that they would come to you, and then you would direct them to the training, which is how the laws used to work when you had to get a permit for the firearm. You had to learn the weapon. You had to go through some kind of training or certification class. There was some showing of responsibility or capability. If you couldn't hit X score at the range, and then you couldn't get that permit, etc. But now what you're going to have, like you said, a lot of these crimes are for people who purchased those firearms illegally. Well, now those same people, if they don't have one of these exclusionary convictions, will have a legal firearm to commit those particular crimes. So it really is a disturbing and disgusting. And let me say this, Sister Shauna, I could listen to you talk all day, because I love that accent you got. That's Louisiana accent.
It is. She just doesn't know it. See, people around here, because I'm not from here either, Mark. So they don't understand. And when I tell them, I say, you don't understand. Hey, I get what you're saying, my brother. I get what you're saying.
Sister could keep on talking. I don't know what you talking about, strokes or whatnot. Nobody would know anything about strokes. But that you could just talk all day. It's very soothing.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Don't catch me too early in the morning on the phone, though. You're gonna be a little confused. Just a little confused.
Brother Jeff.
Mark, I want to kind of go some places that I can go, because I know you're retired. I'm not. I still have about 4 to 6 years in this game, 8 at a maximum in case some things go sideways. But hopefully 4 to 6, I can throw my hands up. Let me say the following. With this law, it's strange because, mind you, we're talking about 18-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those who would argue, and let me be a little devil's advocate in this, those who would argue is at the age of 18, you can go and serve this country and give your life at 18. You can join the armed forces. I'm going to try to really say this the best way I can. There are parts of this I absolutely do not agree with, because weapons of mass destruction and weapons of war should not be on the streets, period. I don't mind you having a weapon for personal or self-defense. However, just to say that folks with no criminal record can go buy a weapon with no training, to me is asinine. Because would you let a person get a driver's license for a car and they couldn't drive? Or they haven't been formally taught how to drive? Or they haven't passed a driving test? In most states, you can't get a driver's license unless you pass a driver's test. That means you got to know the bare minimum rules of the road to drive on the road. Because if you don't know that you need to stop at that stop sign, what you're going to do is run that stop sign and kill somebody or hurt somebody with a bodily injury that might be something that might paralyze them or cause major problems for the rest of their life. I see Sister Shauna had to step out, so let me just do this. I don't have a problem with a person legally owning a weapon, because if you're at legal age to go to war, you should be able to legally own a weapon. However, we should definitely have some certain restrictions. Number A, it's a difference between a weapon of mass destruction and a weapon of war to a personal defense weapon or a personal safety weapon. Shotgun and pistols, I can understand, but some of these ARs and some of these weapons of war and mass destruction, you know, you shouldn't be able to purchase those as a citizen or a civilian, period. That's my opinion. Mm-hmm. There should be some type of mental evaluation and some type of bare minimum training. I don't mind that you can go purchase a weapon, but we should have had a stipulation. If you can legally go purchase a weapon, you have to have a mandatory 72 hours of weapons training. Now, here's why. You, Mark, and I know this, and this is taught to every law enforcement agent, no matter what agency they serve in. You are responsible for those bullets in your weapon. And when you aim down sight, you better make sure that where you're aiming, that's where that bullet's going. Because if it doesn't go there and it hits a little innocent child on the side, you will be held responsible for that. If as law enforcement officers, you are held responsible for the bullets that are in your gun, I feel like every citizen should also, and many folks, when you're just buying a gun, you're not taught that. You're not taught that you're responsible not to lose your cool. Be exact. A lot of folks don't know, even though I know the media blows it up and makes it seem that way. A lot of folks don't know, and Mark agree with me on this one. We're taught more how to de-escalate than to pull out our weapon. The problem is a few bad apples in our organizations have always been the one to get all the spotlight, and everybody thinks because one does it, we all do it. And that happens even with us as people of color. If one black person or one person of color does something bad, that's how they all are. No, that's not the truth. So, Brother Mark, I'm gonna let you speak on that. And now in the state of Louisiana, I don't know about South Carolina, we got a real problem. They're talking about can teachers conceal carry in the classroom because of incidents that happen at school. They're trying to connect that with this constitutional carry law that's sweeping the nation. I'll let you speak on it.
Yeah, and to deal with that right first, yeah, that is some legislation that they're actually trying to work on and work through in South Carolina as well. That conversation about teachers carrying, and like I said, I know that because I'm in one of the school districts here. And just to get back to the main points that you made, you are directly and in line with the majority of Americans, apparently, because for years people have said that's what they want. They want a assault weapons ban. They want a training requirement. They want a 72-hour period to verify and validate a person's information. They want to make sure that individuals who have psychological disabilities do not get a permit, or not allowed to carry firearms, that individuals are excluded in certain circumstances, for example, domestic violence situations. So that's, and I could say always, that seems to be always where the majority of Americans have been. But the people who decide these things, the politicians, vote according to their corporate interests and the NRA's interests, and ignore the wish of their people. Because if they went according to what even gun owners within their states, it's shown, the data has shown this, support, mandatory exclusions for certain people, and permitting and mandatory training, etc. So we're right in line with where the majority of Americans, what they want and what they believe provides the optimum amount of safety. But as long as Congress decides otherwise, we're going to be in this trick bag we're in.
Let me jump in here real quick, because we're not going to hold you too long, Mark, because I know you got to get on with your day. One of the things that we don't talk about is we talk about suicide when we see suicide. You understand? And then you start to hear the statistics. And one of the things I remember, oh my God, this was really back in the 90s, mid or late 90s. I remember on the hip hop cover of the Source magazine, they had young people, and it was talking about the increase of teenage suicide. That was the 90s. That is something that continues today, and you don't hear much of it till you see someone takes their life. So you talk about teenage suicide, and you look at these states where these gun laws, as you said, the constitutional carry and these relaxed gun laws, and even in states like New York State, there's a challenge. The Supreme Court ruled that people have a right to bear arms. So now the governor and the mayor, which we know very well, the mayor, tried to put some strong restrictions, which I said to you, those restrictions are going to be challenged in court, and they're going to lose on a lot of those restrictions on folks carrying. Of course, there's places where you can carry. That's a different conversation. My question is, what is the responsibility of the parents or the guardians of folks, of children? And the reason why I ask that, especially in these states with these kind of laws, I hear some of the parents that are old school. Oh, well, you don't need no gun. You don't need no gun because I ain't have no gun. You don't need this. But they have a right to do it. 18, they have a right to do it. You can't do nothing about it. Oh, I throw them out the house. It's not that easy. You understand? So where does the responsibility, like my daughters are grown, but I said, if I'd have moved my whole family down here, everybody would have gotten training. Not that I would have pushed the gun. I would also advocate conflict resolution. I would have, I would have did everything to bring in the mindset of safety to the household. And I would have gave everybody training, since there would have been a legal firearm in the house, even though I would make sure that it was safe and locked up properly. Even when my daughters visit, I don't even carry my weapon. I just lock it up. You understand? And they're grown, 31 and 28 years old. Matter of fact, my oldest daughter went to New Jersey at a range just to shoot. What do you say to the responsibility of parents now, especially in these states where these laws are beneficial for folks that are 18 or older with no convictions, no record? Is it our responsibility, or do we wait till these kids to grow older and then they don't have to take the training? Do we take more responsibility when we have more control over them to give them that training, to teach them properly, so when they get that age, if they choose to make that decision, they already have a foundation in place?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nail right there. And that is, we have an obligation as parents to lead and guide and instruct, etc. And even beyond the point where we have legal control, so to speak. Like if we adhere to this law, this constitutional carry law, at 18, we don't have legal control over whether or not they can possess a weapon. But the reality of it is, in my house, or in my dimension and in my family unit, I will maintain a particular level of control because I can give the additional understanding and additional responsibilities that comes with gun ownership, if that's something that the young person is in. I have a 17-year-old son right now, so my youngin I will have those discussions with him at the appropriate time if there's an interest. But I have a 36-year-old who was, when I was in the police department, and he'll tell you he didn't even see a gun, and I was a police officer, and his mother was a police officer, but we were living in New York, so the culture was very different there. But he wasn't exposed to it. There was no touch and familiarize yourself with it, because my perspective was, you ain't gonna have an opportunity to carry a gun legally here in New York, no how. So ain't no use in introducing you to it. Now it's a different dimension now that I'm in South Carolina, and I got a 17-year-old. So the short answer is, aside from legal constraints, we do as parents have an obligation and a responsibility to provide as much direction, instruction, and support as possible, and that make a world of difference. And we heard Sister Shauna talk about if her daughters come to her and what her role and her response would be. That's the appropriate level of parental support that we all need, and we must insist on, if you will. I think that's very important. And I want to touch on something, Fatin, because you started off talking about the suicide, and I wanted to mention that with this constitutional carry now, and we're going to have 18-year-olds, many of them will be high school seniors, carrying, 18, I could barely kind of remember 18. I mean, I look 30, but
if you'd had that afro, I would give it to you, bro. If you got the hair like I got, I'll give it to you, brother.
but what I heard and what I kind of recall is that age is very tumultuous, and you're going through so much at that age, and exposing yourself to different relationships and the pressures of school and the pressures in your social circle, and dating and all those type of things, are triggers, sometimes emotional triggers. And sometimes if we aren't taught how to, make adjustments and to deal with these kind of life stresses, it can be overwhelming. So there's always, that possibility, unfortunately, that you would have increases in, handgun suicides with this type of constitutional carry law, because you're now allowing, individuals who may not be the most emotionally stable, and I don't mean that as far as mentally stable, I'm talking about just emotionally stable or life stable, to have the firearms, and not everyone deals with issues, problems, and concerns in the same way. So that's also an additional consideration. And those firearms now will be on campus in the hands of students, even though it will be locked in their car, theoretically or supposedly.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And you know what? A lot of people don't realize, and this is for our viewers, that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And also that guns don't kill people, people kill people. So we really have to get the training, and like Sister Shauna always talks about the bullying training and conflict resolution. All of that is so critical. And for me, at 10 years old, I believe was the first time I ever shot a gun. And I was nice with it, even back then. And it's important. I still go to the range now with my husband. He's in law enforcement. We've taken our 16-year-old daughter to the range, and she was straight to the dome and all body shots, so, and she's about 90 pounds, and but she's good at it. My son, he's about to turn 14 this summer. We'll be taking him to the range. And when you go, and even as a kid, when I was, had the opportunity to shoot guns out in the woods, a lot of other cultures, they take their children out to shoot at a young age, bloom them. They teach them at 5 years old, 6 years old, gun safety, how to respect the gun, how to utilize a gun. And it's better for us to know how to use it in case we ever need it than to not know at all. But with Black folks, many times, just like we don't want to talk about death and life insurance and planning for a funeral and, planning for our death, we don't want to talk about guns either, unless it's, Ray had a gun and he shot Pookie down the block. But no, we need to really embrace it and really understand, because as the laws change, we have to change with the laws. So that's something very important for us to think about.
Yeah, without a doubt. You made some excellent points there. But without a doubt, those are considerations for us, and we have to be mindful that it may be wise to engage our families, our loved ones, into what responsible gun ownership is, regardless of how loose and lax the laws are, what our expectations are, our families' expectations are for gun ownership. And I'm reminded that I was having a discussion with some people in the school district who grew up in South Carolina and one person in Florida. And they were talking about how different it is when they were young, because they said when we were young and going to high schools, we had gun racks in our pickup trucks. Mm-hmm. And we would go to school. I mean, there were always guns on the campus.
Yeah. That part.
Afterwards and everything. So it wasn't, this gun thing is unusual for them, the way we deal with it now.
Right. And I'm from the state of Tennessee. I grew up in a rural area of Tennessee. That's all I've known all my life. Mm-hmm. All my life. When I was maybe 6-7 years old, I got a pellet gun and a BB gun. And that's how they started training us on how to shoot and hunt. My dad would say, look, when you see some of these crows on the line, I'm going to show you how to do the sight alignment, sight picture, and line up. There's two things we haven't talked about. And I want to make this clear. 18 is legally an adult. Legally. Now, remember that. We keep on saying children, but 18 is legally an adult. Second of all, and Brother Fatim knows that I've interviewed this man. I can tell you what happens when we begin to have a clear understanding of the Second Amendment right. Just look at Grandmaster Jay from NAFAC. Mm-hmm. I can tell you exactly what happens when we have a clear understanding of the Second Amendment constitutional right. Look at NAFAC. We'll talk about that at another time. But also understand there's a difference between a legal gun, because legally what you're supposed to do when you purchase a gun is fill out paperwork that is submitted to the federal government where they run a check, and an illegal gun. So here's what I hate. And this is where politics over people always happens. Politicians try to make it seem like, oh my God, this law going to just flood our streets with guns. You thought it was bad then. Wait till how bad. See, that's using politics to make people go, oh my God. When the truth about the matter is, I live in a city that had the highest murder rate ever last year, and this law was not in place. So how did all them guns get on the street? So we really got to start sensationalizing and get down to the nuts and bolts of things. That the truth about the matter is this a bad law? No, it's not. Is it a bad law the way it is? Yes, it is. Because they should have put some safety mechanisms in the law. They should have said, yes, it's perfectly fine if you're 18 and you never committed a crime and you want to purchase a weapon, that should be perfectly fine. But we have this safety mechanism. Number one, you got to have 72 hours worth of training. Number two, you have to have a 72-hour cool down once you fill out your application, that we do some checks and balances. In 72 hours, then you can purchase your gun. Then you got to do 72 hours worth of training, and you cannot purchase a weapon of mass destruction or a military style weapon. Period. If they had did that, I would have said, not only is this law good, this law is great. It's not a bad law, but they left out some things in it that really will probably cause some major issues. And we need to amend this law and make it that the people who are law-abiding citizens will not, because Brother Mark knows this, statistics say more folks get killed with their own weapon when they don't have the proper training than the assailant that came in to try to do the harm that was done. So I'm done with it. Brother Fatim, Brother Mark.
Yeah, let me just say this real quick. Yeah, let me just say this real quick. And we get to Sister Shauna and Jackson, then we'll get ready to wrap up with Brother Mark. You know, I wanted to talk about this. And Brother Mark, you know that we've in the New York on the open line programs on WBLS, which you're a family member there, you know, with us. We talked about preparedness. This is in another level of the conversation. And we're talking about everyday living now because of these laws. These are things that we are affected every day. But we talked about training and being prepared. And we talk about incidents. We've talked about, if you go back into the 80s and the 90s, and I mentioned that this was a focus on some of the talk shows out there. Geraldo talk show, Phil Donahue's talk show, even Oprah. I'm just naming the big shows, but there's other, even Jerry Springer, because everything with Jerry Springer wasn't as, I don't want to use the word buffoonish, but he had dealt with serious topics. He brought on these racist militia groups that were armed to the T. Armed to the T. We also looked at it that it was a domestic problem. But like a brother Eitan that I mentioned, and he will be invited on this show, he said, Fatim, there's a connection internationally with us here domestically with these quote unquote militia and terror and racist organizations out here. They are so far advanced on training, on weapons, that we are so behind. So when Brother Joe brought up Grandmaster Jay from NAFOC, and when Black folks understand the Constitution, Second Amendment rights to bear arms, it scared white America. Oh, they know? That many of them know? You understand what I'm saying? Oh, we got to stop this. You go back to COINTELPRO by J. Edgar Hoover that was put on Black leadership to cut them at the knees and whatever. I'm not trying to scare people, but I'm going to give you a dose of reality. You better wake up. You better get with the times. This is not 1940. This is not, I hear some of you older folks was like, well, it was back in the day. We ain't in back in the day. We're not back in the damn day. Okay? And you better wake up and you better start thinking ahead. And you go about your daily life, but you got to be prepared. Not only for that, you got to be prepared for natural disasters. You got to be prepared for terrorism. You got to be prepared. And it's not just only being able to protect yourself with a weapon. It's a mindset. It's a mindset. Can you talk a little bit about this whole thing about preparedness? And when you look at these organizations, and of course we have folks in our community that prey on our community. And we know that, and we understand that. And every community has that kind of problem. But can you kind of talk a little bit about being prepared for any kind of disaster and kind of connect the dots with what the conversation where we're talking about gun ownership and properly being trained?
Well, one thing for sure is that I could never outdo what Brother Eitan will come on here and do. But I will say this, that it is important, not just in regards to how we secure or safeguard our communities and our families to be prepared and to be kind of disciplined and structured, but it's important as we carry out whatever happens in our communities. We have to be disciplined and structured socially. We have to be disciplined and structured politically. And a lot of that really relies on us being becoming more educated about the realities that we face. If we come to grips or understand or believe that there is a white this lie called white supremacy that has increased in visibility, and that it is pervasive in every aspect of our life now, then we have to begin to one, organize, pull together, communicate more efficiently about the dangers that exist, and then come up with short 5-point plans and how we will achieve those goals. So we have to be more strategic. And that's what planning is. It's about being disciplined. It's about being aware, educated, disciplined, and strategic, how to respond to threats or incidents or activities that are happening that will impact you, your community. And when we talk about community, think of the larger community that we exist in, our social community, as our family. And we should engage in preparing for those things as disciplined as we would as if it was knocking on our front door.
Great. Thank you so much for saying that. Also, I just want to go to one of our messages from a viewer. She says, Laura Bell says, here's another question. How can poor people afford to buy guns, period? And when I think about that, I think about the students that I work with in the community who are all on house arrest, ages 13 to almost 18, who all carry guns, right? It ended up in my class for armed robbery, burglaries, breaking in and entering, stealing cars and things of that nature. And I did an exercise with them one day, and I asked them, if you had $10,000 in your hand right now, what would you do? And I had them all write down on an index card without sharing it or speaking about it aloud. When they turned over and passed me the index cards, everyone said one of the first things they would do is buy a gun, right? And it's interesting because these are young, beautiful, intelligent young men, but they're so fascinated by the gun culture. So like we talked about before, if you think about someone that is a millionaire, right? Maybe their parents were millionaires and now they grow up, become an adult, make their first million. Being a millionaire is not that big of a deal to them because they've grown up with it like that, right? So with these young men and women, getting a gun is a big thing because they were never taught about gun safety and having a gun, the positive side of it. So their first thing is like, oh, I got a gun. But maybe if they were reared at the age of 5, about gun safety and having one and that it's okay to have one and this is how you use it, they wouldn't be so excited to get their first $10,000 and get a gun. So to answer your question, Laura Bell, the same way in our community where we're stricken with poverty and we can get some other things, we have to learn how to save up, create a plan. If you want to get a gun and you find out the laws in your area, what do you need to do to get a gun permit? What do you need to do to purchase a gun? And then you just start tacking it down and start making a plan to purchase it. You have to save if that's what it takes. You have to be strategic about it and create a plan. When you look at those in our community, many times we have the nicest sneakers, the nicest name brand sweatshirts, the nicest clothes,
Nicest cars, you name it.
Got the hair, the wigs, the lashes, and all of this other stuff. So we need to say, you know what? Safety first. We got to be prepared for the end times, like Brother Fatin talks about. So let's say, put that as one of your goals, to purchase a legal gun and to go about all the proper protocols to get it done.
And I want to say this, and I want to say this. I'll give you a prime example. Mark and I will be the only, probably Brother Fatim also. If you go purchase a weapon legally and you can't tell me the 7 fundamentals of shooting, you shouldn't have never bought that weapon. See, if you can't, right now, if I ask a person, okay, you're getting ready to buy this weapon, do you know the 7 fundamentals of shooting? Do you understand how to breathe? Do you know about squeezing the trigger? Do you know about follow through? Do you know about sight and picture? Do you know how to align your sights? If you don't know the 7 fundamentals of shooting, why are you purchasing a weapon? We've got to get more sensible and realistic. Now, I ain't even gonna say realistic. We need to get more sensible and better understanding gun legislation. It's nothing wrong with the Second Amendment. It's wrong when you don't put safety mechanisms on here that it doesn't turn into the wild, wild west. Just think about it. Mark knows, and follow the money. Listen, just like we had DARE, watch this. I promise you within the next year to 2 years, there will be a similar program like DARE
Mhm.
geared toward guns in school, because all you got to do is follow the money. Sometimes I say, we keep on talking about this should help our. No. Follow the money. If you follow the money, you'll find out people profit from our pain and our poverty. Follow the money.
That's great. Those are great statements, and it's also important. Like we look at legislation like this constitutional carry nonsense and say, well, they just want to increase the availability of legal firearm possession. But I think a lot of times we have to look at what the third answer may be. Like Brother M2 may, Fatim, the third answer would say, look beyond the obvious one and look at the third answer. What may be an ulterior motive behind increasing gun ownership this dramatically, this rapidly, and where are we politically in this nation as it stands right now? What perhaps are we preparing for? What needs to be done? And who are we preparing to carry out those things? So a lot of times it's not as simple as is written in black and white, but there is a third answer. There is an ulterior motive. There's a third level that perhaps we aren't really paying attention to.
There's a date coming up. Date coming up. It's called November the 6th. Since y'all want to talk about January the 6th, you better write down November the 6th, 2024. I've been saying this to folks. Y'all keep y'all writing down the wrong dates.
That's
everything is a dress rehearsal. A dress.
Mm-hmm.
We done had Facebook and Instagram go down. We done had mysteriously AT&T and Verizon to go down. All of a sudden, you saw what happened on January the 6th. You see what happens right now on the southern border just today. Just today, a bunch of migrants yesterday, they bum rushed the fence, and you saw the response of the net. Everything is a dress rehearsal for what?
Yeah. And they're trying to get TikTok from the Chinese and have an American corporation purchase, control it, so to speak.
Exactly. And since 9/11, and we talked about this on the preparedness, when Eitan said, you guys that have cars, you got to realize you can't get out the city with cars if there's an incident that happens in New York City. What happens after 9/11? A plane goes down. I'm in Manhattan. I'm at work. I call my wife because we don't know if it's terrorism. I was like, I will call you back. You need to go to the ATM and pull out this now. Now. Don't blink. Don't say my hair ain't done. Go now. Pull that out. I will call you back. By the time I called her back, I told her, sit tight. We can't move. Mayor Giuliani at the time was the mayor. He locked New York City down. No bridge, no tunnel you could cross. Locked down. Mm-hmm. He locked it down. That was their protocols put in place. That's why you need to be prepared. Understand that if you got to escape, especially from an urban area with city where you got to cross bridges and tunnels and they can shut them down, you can't move. They can shut roadways down, but it's a little easier for us that are in the South to move a little bit more freely. Where in the city, they can lock it down quickly. Be prepared. Don't you know those in New York City in that 90 radius of 3 Miles Island, which is the nuclear power plant, if something happens there, they lock in a radius of 90 miles. They lock it down because they don't want people coming within that area, outside of that area, contaminating the rest of the country. You don't know these things. You don't know that there was a power outage when New York City went down. The power grids failed. We wanted to fail over to another power grid. Those states said no, because you may bring us down. You got to understand the level where we're at. And Joe and we all talk about how we are smarter with technology, but more vulnerable to technology today. You understand what I'm saying? Just like we talk about, I'm getting ready to call a meeting with my family. I hope one of my family members is seeing this. I'm getting ready to call a meeting because we talk about if the cell phones go down, Joe. So now I'm going to make sure that every family member now, we all have a walkie-talkie device
Mhm.
that
Roger
we can
that.
communicate with everybody, so we
Wait.
don't have to communicate with cell phone. What will be our meeting points? We will do drills.
Yeah.
This is serious, y'all.
Come on.
You can go to Walmart, you can go to these stores, and you can buy these devices. You don't know. You go and buy all these other frivolous things because you think you rely on the government is going to take care of you. And when there's chaos, there's anarchy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Let's see how the Louis and the Gucci works then.
Your wife listened. You told her how to listen to you, right? Many times our women are so out of pocket, and we don't trust the men that we chose. So our sisters need to understand, if there is a man in the home and he says, let's move, or let's be out now, he doesn't need all of this. Well, how come we got to go now? Why can't we do this? I need to do that. Shut the hell up and go. Follow his leadership. You chose him. Now follow his leadership and make sure that he's in position early on. Like you're saying, Brother Fatim, you were already saying, go ahead. We got to get these walkie-talkies. We got to get this. So at least your daughters now know, I got to get to my daddy, or I got to have what I need to be able to communicate with my daddy, or be where I need to be and do the right thing. We need to put those plans in place. And as a people, we don't put plans in place. We're more reactive instead of proactive. So
some of you don't even have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen. Some of you don't even have a fire extinguisher in your car.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? I got a power device in my car that I can plug in to the cigarette lighter and then plug in devices.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? But let me just stop running on. I just want to say this because I'm giving Mark Claxton last words and let him get on with his day. But Joe mentioned the 7 fundamentals of shooting. And let's just give, because I know people out there, if they haven't Googled it, what are the 7 fundamentals of shooting? Stance, grip, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control, breathing control, and follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So those are the 7 fundamentals. You may know them, but if you don't practice them, you got to practice. This is about practicing when you're shooting and things like that. It's a whole mechanism. The same thing as hitting a baseball. You just take up and going up and hitting the bat. It's technique. Same as a quarterback. It's technique. Everything is working together. Joe talked about a left arm and the right arm coordination working together because we've been trained since a kid how to coordinate, how to walk, how to move our hands, how to breathe, how to blink. It's training.
As soon as I get off here, I'm headed to the range.
Okay.
And that was already planned long before I even knew Mark was coming on. You've got to listen. I know it's cliche-ish, but if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready.
That's right.
And understand this. It's all about, and here's the word for today, setting my priorities. See, if you're so busy to buy Louis and Gucci and Mercedes, none of that's gonna be a hell of beans if our hell break loose or the little green men show up like in some of them sci-fi movies or the zombies show up. So if
down
you ain't
in
ready
Florida at the mall.
Right. If you listen, right. So you down shopping for Louis and Gucci, and there's some little really heavy green men running around snatching up folks, biting their heads off. That ain't gonna do you no good. So listen, learn just basic fundamentals. Those 7 things that Brother Fatim talked about, if you're a gun owner, you should know that. You should know that. You should know it, period. That's the point. Every gun owner should know at least, here's the 7, basic 7. And if you don't, why do you own
Joe
a gun?
just froze. Joe just froze.
Okay.
Well, when Joe froze, he gonna have to, there you go. You froze, Joe. You got, all right, so what I'm gonna do, all right, so Mark, I'm going to give you final words so I can let you get on with your day. I appreciate you taking some time before you got out and, got your grits in. And, me and Mark talk about these grits. You got to get those grits in before you start your day. I give you final words, my brother Mark. And again, thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise with our audience today, my brother.
But first of all, let me just thank y'all for having me, and thank you for this lively discussion. And gave me, food for thought, like they say. But Joe messed me up with the zombies. Cause I got the little green man. I ain't really worried about the zombie thing. I'm fearful. I'm fearful of the zombie thing. That's really concern for me. But yeah, just thank you so much for having me on, and I hope that we were able to kind of exchange and share some valuable information that people, can then take out. And since Joe's word is a priority, it's a priority for us to increase our level of understanding, and we do that most effectively and efficiently by this form of communication. So thank you so much for the invitation, and I look forward to coming back on and chopping it up with y'all.
Sounds good.
Welcome,
Sounds
brother.
good.
Mikase Sukase, this is your house now. You welcome in anytime. We will bring you back. I actually want to do a forum of brothers in law enforcement and former law enforcement officers where we talk about to our people understanding how to engage with law enforcement. I think we're the conduit to bring about the change where people can understand really what goes on in these streets.
Excellent.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, excellent, Joe. And again, Mark Claxton, he's the director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance and retired NYP, New York Police Department detective. All right, Mark, go ahead and get on with your day, my brother, and we'll be in touch, man. All right. Okay, my brother. All right. Well, Joe, I'll turn it back over to you, but I thought that was a lively discussion. And Jax,
Yes, sir.
you getting ready to get drafted. You getting ready to get drafted to my BLS show, girl. You are. Woo. And Joe is also going to be one of our contributors because you both and Sister Shauna on her bullying piece. We have to keep these messages out there. And thank you. But I'll just turn it over to Joe and let him go with this book. Joe, just a little summation on our conversation with Brother Mark Claxton this morning.
So family, it is important. It is important that you understand the laws in your city, your state, your town. I think the biggest thing that I want anybody to get from this today is know what's going on in your city, in your state, know the laws. Not knowing the laws does not help you. Understanding what the laws are. One of the things we didn't talk about, which we will talk about the next time we bring them on, this constitutional carry in conjunction with stand your ground, which there's a stand your ground law in South Carolina. There's a stand your ground law in Louisiana. I don't think there's a stand your ground law in New Jersey. So or in New York. But these stand your ground laws now in combination with these constitutional carry laws, you got to know the law. And ultimately, you got to know that anytime that you have an instrument in your hand that can take life, it then puts you at a place of a higher level of responsibility and accountability. That should be the last resort. We talked about punishment with children, and folk who over the age of 40 or some over the age of 30 can say, well, if that's abuse, I've been getting abused my whole life. As we evolve and things evolve and laws change, you got to know the law. You have to know the law. It is incumbent to you to understand what can occur when you decide to go purchase something that can be a life-taking instrument. That's about all I got to say.
You pause to go purchase something. Say that again. Go purchase something, and you hung for it.
Yeah. Okay. So I must have paused on Fatim's side. If you go purchase an instrument that can take someone's life, you need to know the consequences of you need to know the laws governing what would happen if you were put in a position to have to take a life. Because guess what? You can legally take a life, and then the judicial system might look at it as involuntary manslaughter. There's law. You got to know the laws. You got to know the laws. Sometimes they don't look at it as self-defense. They'll say, well, wait a minute, you could have walked away. You didn't have to pull out that weapon. You could have threw up your hand. There's a lot of stuff you could have did. You got to know the law, because just because stop knowing Law and Order law that you saw on TV. Know the law. Stop looking at TV law and stop dealing with these shade tree attorneys and these shade tree folks who own the corner who can tell you the law. No, you better know the law, Brother Fatim.
You was right on point, Joe. I mean, you was right on point. Somebody wrote, Michael Jenkins wrote this in the comments. We didn't go into this conversation today because I wanted to kind of stay in a certain lane today. Michael Jenkins writes, a bad cop will feel he can shoot a black with a gun for being black with a gun, even if legal. and he puts Philando Castile. And, you know, we know that we as people of color, you know, some of us feel like we have, and it's proven that we have a bullseye on our back. You know, the Goon Squad in Mississippi, those 6 white police officers that tortured 2 black individuals, boy, that judge threw the book at them. One of those sheriff received 40 years in jail, 40 years in jail. The least sentence was about 17 and a half years in jail. So, you know, we're starting to see some things start to play in our favor. Joe, I'm going to say something that's very controversial. And I discussed this first at home with my late wife. And this was when we as Black folks were getting shot down, you know, due to police brutality. And I said to my wife, unfortunately, some of these officers are not going to learn until we start shooting back. And when I said that, I say that, and I say that right now as a disclaimer, that's not the answer. What happened was we would continue to get shot down. So what took place, and I believe it was Dallas, Texas. I know it was Texas. There was an individual that went on a shooting spree, and he started shooting cops. Of course, I remember they sent the robot into the garage, and they wind up shooting and killing that individual. But what happened? What happened? President Obama ran down there and had a forum with the people of Texas and this, that, and the other. We got to get better. We have to have better communication because there are a lot of good police officers out there. There are a lot of good police departments out there because NYPD, I didn't know. I went to a forum in my community some years back and they came in with all this brass and they talked about this and what they have and to go into the community and relate with the people. I said, why don't we know this? Why don't you come to us that can put you on the air to talk to the Black and brown community so we can have a better relationship? So what we need to do, and I say to you, Joe, and I say to other people that are connected to law enforcement, let's build a bridge. Let's have better communication, especially with these laws out here, because we can work hand in hand. Because when they take off that uniform, they may live right next door to you, and they may have to go through the same thing in their community that you go through. It's just that they had taken an oath and they have a responsibility as a law enforcement officer. You understand? And those that are law enforcement officer, I understand about bleeding, you know, blue and the brotherhood of blue. And I understand that. But if you don't want the wrath of the people and you want to come back and say, well, all cops are not bad, then your asses need to speak up against the bad cops. Because if you don't speak up against the bad cops, we come in at all cops until you decide to speak up. Mark Claxton spoke up against those. He was our Serpico in the community, but he wasn't by himself. And Google who Serpico. Google who Serpico was, a real police officer that Al Pacino played in a movie where he he reported corrupt police, and those corrupt police set him up, and he was shot in the face, but he survived. Jax?
Amen. Amen. Closing words, Joe? We doing closing words or we still flowing?
Let's get it. Yeah, let's whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do.
Yes, I just want to tell my people, please create a plan, create a strategy. Like Joe said, get ready, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. Go into this beautiful weekend with thoughts about how can I move differently? What can I do? What can I create? Create a budget. You don't have to be a mastermind or great in math to create a budget. Simply create a plan. If it is to, you know, arm yourself, ultimately figure out, do some research online. Just like you tune into the show, tune into Google or whatever platform you utilize. Find out how much does it cost to get a gun permit. And it's not as challenging and as difficult as it may seem. So we just cannot continue to move with the spirit of fear. So I want to also tell you, if you have any mental health issues, make sure you make an appointment. Take some time today, make an appointment. If you're on meds, take your meds. If your meds are not working so good, speak to somebody, get some help, go back to the doctor. If you're looking for a life coach or a life strategist, feel free to reach out to me. You can hit me up at on Instagram at Skills for the Soul, SKILLS FOR the Soul, SOUL. Or you can even go on my website, jaxlake.com, JAXLAKE.com, and make an appointment, and we can do a life strategy session with you to help you with whatever issues you may have. So in closing, I want to go to 2 Timothy 1:7, and it reads, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Salute my people. Have a phenomenal weekend. I'll see you on Monday, Lord's will.
Yeah. And my closing
and hold
thoughts.
on. And before we go to you, Brother Fatim, I want to say this. Next week, y'all get ready. Get ready. Starting Monday all the way until Friday. Get ready. It's going to be a big week. It's going to be a big week. We've got some huge guests that are coming in. We're going to be doing and talk about even bigger things. And believe it or not, this podcast has only been consistent for about a month and a few weeks. We're really not even 60 days old. But
into our 5th week, we concluded our 5th week today.
Okay, we concluded our hold it. So we're 1 month, 1 week old. So and I'm thankful for the consistency of the 4 horsemen, of Sister Jax, Brother Fatim, and Sister Shauna. And we're always here once again, not to tell you how to think, but to give you enough information that you begin to do the research and you begin to think. And with that being said, let me turn it over to Brother Fatim. Brother Fatim, hit me with your closing words, my friend.
It's interesting. I said to Joe yesterday, I said, me and Sister Jax think alike. And then Joe we think alike because he just said what my closing words are to a degree. I want to say this to you, my brothers and sisters today. I wrote it down real quick. So I'm just looking down because I scribbled it. Be your own teacher and researcher. Be your own teacher and researcher so you can be a better brothers and sisters keeper for our family and our community.
That was beautiful. So family, it is the 22nd day of March. It is a Friday. Thank God that it's Friday. Thank God that I'm forgiven. Thank God for my wonderful, wonderful cohort of individuals who do this thing with me every Monday through Friday for 2 hours called #Truth Be Told. Big ups to my girl Shauna Sias, the conduit. Big ups to my girl Jax, who is art therapist, celebrity author. I mean, she's doing it big in Brick City. To my brother from another mother, Fatim Muhammad, man, WBLS 107.5, the open lines, keeping it real with Al Sharpton. I'm just full of thankfulness right now. And thank you to Mark Claxton for coming on here, taking time out and doing what he does so well, is explaining to us from being inside the system how we need to operate with the system. And family, all I gotta say is, I always say it and I end it the same way: be better today than you were yesterday, and do something today to help somebody somewhere that there's no earthly way they can pay you back for what you've done for them. And always remember, I really don't even want to end the show. Have you ever considered you don't want to end the show? Let me bring my people back in here. Hold on. What did you say?
We love you, Joe.
I love you too.
We love you, Joe.
I love y'all too.
So let me tell y'all my conversation, because me, Joe, and Jax, we get on the call phone. I'm gonna just say it to them now, because Joe will come in. This is a great, awesome show. Let me just tell you, I'm gonna reveal this real quick. We don't script these shows. We don't have no production meetings. When we bring on guests, we just put it in the chat. We bring it on so we don't conflict with times. We don't want our guests to conflict. We don't want to step on anybody's toes. When I brought up the topic about discipline, well, see, I pick out words. Sometimes Jax will say something, and I'll pick out. The other day, I just looked at Joe and Jax, and I looked at the different complexion, and that's how I brought up the conversation about colorism. Today, Joe said something about discipline, and that's how I brought up the topic. We didn't have that scripted. That was not on our agenda to talk about today, about discipline and corporate punishment and this, that, and other. That wasn't there. We do this on the fly. So as Joe thanked this team, I also salute everybody on this team, but I also salute our growing family that is in the chat and that calls us on a daily basis. Thank you for the love and the support. And I just want to share that little tidbit with you, because we, Joe and Jackson, get on the phone and say the same thing.
Yep.
We'll be on the phone in about another 10 minutes. No, maybe not, because I'm getting ready to go to the gun range for real.
Yes.
But family, family, I love these people. I love Jax. I love Brother Fatim. I love Sister Shauna. I love everybody that's in the feed. I'm on mission control side. They don't see all the stuff I see. They don't see
Donald Trump just came in, so you love everybody. Donald Trump just typed in, so you love everybody in the feed. Go ahead, bro. Now, see, no, but Joe does. He love everybody. That don't mean he likes everybody. And Donald Trump did not come in the feed. I'm just joking.
But no, I'm on mission control side, and they don't see that right now. We're broadcasting live in about 75 different cities around the world. They don't see right now that there's somebody logged in Cape Town, South Africa. They don't see that there's somebody logged in Frankfurt, Germany. They don't see that somebody in Okinawa, Japan has got us locked in right now. They don't see the Chicago, the Atlanta, the Dallas, wait a minute, what's the name of this city? Some small city I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Opelousas or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But some small city seems to be some city I can't even pronounce that is in New Mexico. It must be a Indian name. They don't see all this. They don't see all this. And yes, we come straight from off the dome. We don't sit down and have production meetings. We don't have a discussion about these are the guests we're going to have for the week. These are the subjects we're going to talk about. This is the rundown. We don't have a rundown. We don't have a rundown. We don't have morning prep. We don't even pull up morning prep. We just begin to start talking about things that we know are relevant to us, and they may be relevant to you. And we just let them metamorphosize into whatever it's going to be, because it winds up being great conversation.
That's right. I always tell people I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, keep going. Go.
I always tell people to tune into the show. I said it's literally like you're calling your best friend and just chopping it up, and wherever the conversation goes, we just flow. And it's just like having remember back in the day, a three-way call, a conference call, just, you know, and it's just so authentic and real, and we love what we do. And although it's 2 hours, that's not a big chunk out of our day, but we're committed to our viewers, we're committed to one another. And we absolutely love and appreciate everybody tuning in, everybody calling in, everybody all over the globe. And this is just going to grow and get bigger. And we can't do it without our viewers. We love you guys. Thank you.
Right. Like, we are only who we are because of y'all. We appreciate you. That's why many a times we try to put our own, we express our feelings, but we try to tell you, we're not here to tell you to think like us or to be like us. We're just telling you from our point of view, this is where it's at. And you may see it that way, you may not. And if we welcome people to comment, we welcome people to call in. So I'm going to ask my two of the four horsemen outside of myself that are here. Do y'all have anything else y'all want to say?
I want to say one thing I shared with Joe yesterday, and hopefully we can touch on this topic next week. I said yesterday I'm going to invite Charles Barron on, who's a former New York politician, former Black Panther Party, and talk about how you don't have to compromise or bend to get into politics and win in politics and still be there and stand for the community from the day one you walked in to the day you walked out. Okay, so we do that. But we're going to talk about something that we have to talk about. And I know we talked about monogamy, but I was telling Joe something that I experienced about feeling and a connection, because we look at attraction. Like when we get attracted to a person, we see their beauty, we see something about them. But I want to talk about energy, because this is where I'm going to go. I'm not pushing polygamy. I just want to say from energy, if you feel a person and you connect it, you can connect to more than one person. So I want to have a conversation. I don't see Jack's face, but I can see her face there, because I was touched last week about how I felt something for one young lady, and then I felt something for another young lady. And I was like, that's energy. And energy can't be contained. And a lot of times we as man and woman, we make up these things to put us in a box. And the question is, should we always be put in a box, or how do we deal with those levels of energy in a responsible way? Okay.
Right.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to let Jax have a word on that. The reason we're going to talk about that, there is a difference. Jax and I are in a different place than Brother Fatim and Sister Shauna. Jax is in a marriage as I am in a marriage. We are happily married.
And I was in a marriage.
To wonderful folks. But at the present moment, you're not. And because of unfortunate the passing away of your wife, which I loved your wife. I had the opportunity to speak to you and your wife. I actually we'll talk about that at a later
You
date.
prayed for my wife in your church when I came to visit. Don't had me in tears. I had to call her. I'm choking up because you came up and stood by me and prayed for my wife because she was dealing with sickle cell anemia. Thank you for that. I'll never ever forget.
Man. Listen, we many a times, if anything, I want y'all to get the viewers, the people who view in, call in, the people who even go back and watch this. This is my family here. You ain't got a lot, but you got family. This really my family, and understand that's my brother, and I'm my brother's keeper. That's my sister. I'm my sister's keeper. And sometimes it ain't easy because the same thing you love would be the same thing to break your heart. That doesn't change that these my people, and I roll with them. I'm 10 toes down for them, and we're gonna keep doing what we're doing until the Lord tell us something different. So not only do we do this for ourselves, we do it for you too, because we know how it feels to be a part of that lost tribe, to be out there, and it feels like you really all by yourself. Now look like we reclosing. Sister Jackson, give me some closing words again.
All right, again, I want you guys to know that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. Is trying to take you out, but he's not going to take you out. Don't allow him to take you out. Not today, not tomorrow, or no day. So as you go through the weekend, just know the darts are going to be thrown, and it's okay. It's all a matter of how you respond to it. And I want to close with Isaiah 54:17. No weapon formed that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment, thou shalt condemn. So don't worry about what they say. Just keep it moving, live a righteous life, do the right thing, and do your best to be the best person that you could possibly be. Have a great weekend.
Let me do my bust around. Wheel up, bring it back, come rewind. Come on, number 2, close it again.
As this being Women History Month.
Yes.
And a lot of times us men want to have the last word. I concur, I agree, and I'll let Sister Jack's words be my last words as well.
And with that being said, we out of here. Peace. That's all I got to say. Have a great weekend.
Last night I saw you standing, and I started pretending I knew you, and you knew me too. And just like a moment, you were too shy. But you weren't the only cause, so was I. And I dreamed of you ever since. Now I build up my confidence, and next time you come my way, I know just what to say. Can we talk? Started to write you letters, but I wanted to be more clever. I wanted to get down and sweet talk you, baby. But just like a baby, I could not talk, and I tried to come closer, but could not walk. And I think of it every night, how I just could not get it right. Oh, if we ever gotta tell me your name, baby. I said,